Todd, Kyle, and Dan, and Vegas Knights are on to the Stanley Cup Final with John Tortorella behind the bench. He was flown in, and look what he did. He brought the team to the Cup Final. Nate McKinnon is out. Connor McDavid is out. So, Furzy, here's what this is all shaping up to happen. Tort's going to be the coach of McDavid and McKinnon at some point in Toronto.
Will that be with or without Morgan Riley as the number one D-man in Toronto? Or will the Leafs make a move this offseason, Dan, to acquire Darnell Nurse? Because we know what the Maple Leafs need more than anything. It's an overpaid puck-moving defenseman on their back end.
But the Torts thing could possibly happen because, as you pointed out to us before we started here, he has not been signed to a contract extension.
Look, Torts may take it to the open market. He may decide he wants to go to the highest bidder, and we'll see what direction he goes in. But I can't imagine that is where the Leafs are going to go to fill their vacancy behind the bench. But weirder things have happened, and we'll see, more importantly, maybe what unfolds with Colorado if they decide to go in a different direction. It's pretty amazing how fast they turned on Jared Bednar amid this sweep against the Vegas Golden Knights. Colorado had no answers. Were really unable to generate chances at 5-on-5 in the second and third period, especially when they were playing from a negative game state. And there is a very accomplished head coach that resides in Denver that has been the crown jewel in the NHL coaching search for a while. You have to imagine if the Avs do want to go in a different direction, going to be an awfully attractive proposition to get Denver Pioneers head coach David Carl over behind an NHL bench.
Todd, it feels like only a few short weeks ago when I was out in Las Vegas. I was there, of course, to meet Doug Gazarian, but as a secondary mission, I was there to go to a Toronto Maple Leafs game in T-Mobile Arena because it was the first time Mitch Marner was to play his old teammates, the Toronto Maple Leafs, since the offseason move, which no one had heard about or ever spoke of. When we sat there, I don't recall the conversation between you and I prognosticating that Mitch Marner was on the brink of leading the Vegas Golden Knights to a Stanley Cup Final appearance.
No, that was not part of our dialogue, amongst other topics that won't be discussed in this kind of public forum. But Dan, I appreciate Kyle being man enough to admit that he was out here to rendezvous with Doug Kazarian and just decided to use me for a ticket to see Mitch Marner against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the truth comes out months later. I'm glad that we've provided a safe space for all parties involved. But look, Mitchell Marner wasn't asked to do nearly as much for this Vegas Golden Knights team coming in early in the season as he was for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He didn't turn into the 100-point player because Vegas had other players that were more than capable of picking up the slack. But I think something that I didn't appreciate enough about his game is how talented he was as a 200-foot player. And he's kind of bought into the ethos of this locker room as a whole, that everybody is unselfish. They're willing to do the little things it takes that translates into big results in playoff hockey. I mean, look at the stat line for Jack Eichel. He's got a grand total of 2 goals so far, and he is still the most important player on this Knights roster. Mark Stone is probably the bane of every power skating coach's existence throughout North America when you watch his unorthodox stride. Yet he's able to catch a flip pass from Braden McNabb, put it down, and be able to get the game-winning goal essentially against Mackenzie Blackwood in the pivotal Game 4. So there's nothing that Vegas does that's traditional by any stretch of the imagination. And Marner has kind of bought into that overall team concept. It's the big reason why he's the Conn Smythe favorite at this point, and finding ways to contribute not just on the stat sheet, but also with some of his defensive responsibilities as part of a line that has really made the biggest difference with the return of William Karlsson centering that second group and the uncharacteristic offensive production of Brett Howden on the wing as well.
The Golden Knights have simply become an annoyance to every other franchise, saying they joined the league in 2017, and here they are again. Please explain how they can get it done when every other well, I'm pointing at the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs just cannot get there.
I think the one team that should be the most bitter in all this, Dan, has to be the Seattle Kraken. I know people are pointing to the expansion rules, but if you dig into it, Seattle had the exact same expansion rules that Vegas did. Now, maybe GMs learned a thing or two about the way that Vegas tried to go out there with ruthless efficiency and, pick up the kind of players they wanted, the scouting. But the one thing that I think Vegas has done so well is they've kind of shown that, you know what, we don't care about draft picks. If we have an opportunity to go out there and acquire a player, we want to get guys into this system that we know are going to translate right away, and draft capital be damned. Now, there's going to come a day where they have to pay the piper, and when that becomes, if it's 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, that this may not be a sustainable model, but you've seen some of that from the Los Angeles Rams in the NFL. When you're this close, trade that draft capital, get players in, and then figure out what to do with everybody later. There's a lot of things that this Knights organization has done that probably doesn't endear them to coaches, agents, former players with their ruthless negotiating skills, but it's translated to on-ice results. And for that, Vegas is playing within the rules and doing everything they can to exploit loopholes that may or may not have presented themselves over their short 9-year existence.
Everything about that is so Vegas. It is so Vegas. What you just said, this team is run the way it should be, and they've had great success.
Well, it's run well, as he just said, it's run like a Vegas visitor. This is not sustainable, but I'm going to continue it till I fly out of here Monday.
And look, if things don't go the right way, if you decide to cheat the system, they'll just drag you into a back room and figure out how to cheat you into oblivion and get you to submit one way or another. The craziest part about all this, though, is all of the buzz since this playoff run has started and Carter Hart has asserted himself kind of as the number one netminder is who can we get to take Adin Hill with that ghastly contract they signed him to after winning the Stanley Cup a few short seasons ago. And they were ready to run Tomas Hertl out of town after the first 2 series. Suddenly, Hertl has the big goal as part of that 3-goal comeback in Game 3 against the Colorado Avalanche, and they want to celebrate number 48. My biggest question is this. Can someone that comes from the San Jose Sharks organization and that ill-fated team, what was it, 2010, 2012, finally break the long-standing jinx and get their name engraved in the Stanley Cup? I'm not exactly optimistic about that happening.
Todd, they can take Adin Hill out of Las Vegas, but they cannot take my Adin Hill bobblehead, which is just over my shoulder or behind me, the lone memory from my trip to meet Doug. Now, and
it might be the lasting image of Adin Hill in Vegas Golden Knights paraphernalia as well. Although he was part of the team picture, I can attest to that. I have video evidence of such.
So tonight in Montreal, Game 4 goes. The Hurricanes take the ice with a 2-1 series lead. It's a pretty tight-knit series. What can we expect in Game 4?
I think Carolina is finally starting to get to their game. I mean, they've held Montreal to a combined 25 shots on goal over the last 2 games. And it really took a stat correction for Montreal to be credited with 1 shot on goal in that 3-2 loss at the Bell Center. Yes, on the scoreboard, Carolina has a pair of back-to-back 3-2 overtime victories against Montreal. But anyone who's watched those games know it's been anything but close. Jakub Dobeš looks anything remotely human in Game 4 tonight. The floodgates open. And I think you're starting to see some of that fatigue wear on the Montreal Canadiens, the byproduct of going to a best-of-7 series and needing a Game 7 in round 1 against Tampa, round 2 against the Buffalo Sabres. And something that Marty St. Louis said in wake of the Game 3 loss that really stuck with me is that his team can't match the maturity of the Carolina Hurricanes. This is a team that's accumulated a ton of scar tissue over the last couple of years. I mean, we knew about how long their losing streak was in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Florida Panthers, but they look every part, Jesus, easy for me to say. They look every bit the part of a team that is a legitimate cup contender and a force to be reckoned with. Their ability to roll 4 lines. You're getting contributions from the top unit. You're getting contributions from the second group. 6 defensemen that are able to eat a lot of those high leverage minutes. And what felt like more of an anomaly at the time, Jacob Slavin logging a -4 in Game 1 against the Canadiens is a thing of the past. I think Carolina puts a stranglehold on this series, and I'm closer to that $1.60 range for the way that I think this game should be priced. It's the scoreboard cosmetics that are artificially keeping this price down for Game 4 tonight.
What's screaming down the tracks at Gary Bettman is a possible Carolina-Vegas final. And he can say all he wants. I don't care who's in the final. He does not want that final. And then people will say, well, he wants American teams. No, you want the Montreal Canadiens in there because you want Canadian eyeballs. If you've got Carolina, Vegas, you've got no one in a hockey country watching a final that is not made for TV.
And the other part that I'll layer on top of that, outside of those 2 markets not really moving the needle, if we were having this conversation 10 plus years ago, Dan, you'd be cringing because if you're looking for high event hockey and high scoring offensive outbursts, this is going to remind us a lot more of the neutral zone trap New Jersey Devils days. And you're going to see a lot more 2-1, 3-2 maximum hockey games between 2 teams that are very comfortable to defend. And when both of them get a lead, love to do nothing more than suppress chances the other way, like we saw on full display in the closeout game for Vegas after holding the Avalanche off the stat sheet for more than 20 plus minutes. I think it was 1 shot on goal over the span of about 22:04. Carolina more than happy to play that way as well. So I think you could be looking for a lot of tight checking, low scoring hockey games if that is indeed the Stanley Cup final we get starting next
Well,
week.
not to mention the other owners don't like the Carolina Hurricanes owner, Tom Dundon, because he doesn't wear suits. He doesn't play their game.
He also doesn't want to travel the practice squad as a member of the Portland Trailblazers and won't give his team late checkout. So Tom Dundon not exactly endearing himself to NBA ownership across the league, where Bill Foley on the other side has kind of been the consummate pro and, has done everything for this Vegas team. And I say it tongue in cheek, but I do genuinely mean it, that we've been extremely spoiled out here in the desert. 3 Stanley Cup appearances in 9 seasons. It's not how this league is meant to work when it comes to parity and everything else. But I think it becomes the barometer and why Gary Bettman continues to sell the dream of team ownership, that it doesn't take long to be able to flip the switch, kind of turn the fates, and Vegas kind of the illustration of that, getting to the third Cup final in just 9 short seasons.
Todd, play devil's advocate for a second. What would a Montreal Vegas final look like?
It would be a revenge scenario from a conference finals in the COVID era where Montreal knocked off Vegas just a few short seasons ago. How quickly people forget that iconic series before Montreal came up short against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it would be a contrast in styles. And you know what? You do have a little bit of that brash, young, up-and-coming component for the Montreal Canadiens that I think would play well in this Vegas market. If you're looking for some of the player parallels, I mean, who can forget the Nick Suzuki deal for Max Pacioretty and players to be named later that gave Montreal kind of one of their seminal building blocks to spearhead where they are now. But for the Canadiens, win or lose in the Eastern Conference Final, I think they've proved a ton. We've seen the core that they're going to build around going forward, and there should be a lot of reason for folks in and around the Bell Center to be optimistic. But guys, one of the biggest anomalies this postseason, and I think Montreal have to try and figure out whether it's a byproduct of a youthful roster more than anything else, that building is absolutely electric, but Montreal just can't deliver the same way at home as they can on the road, whether it's their desire to try and impress those fans and not be able to get to a quote-unquote true road game, a de facto simplified performance in front of their home fans, the same way they've been able to do away from Quebec.
Here's what Buddy pointed out to me this morning. He says, if Montreal does make it, imagine Carter Hart playing in Montreal and what the fans will give him.
Oh, it'll be absolutely brutal on a variety of fronts. And you begin to wonder now, speculation is kind of what we do. If Carter Hart continues his current run of form, would the writers end up voting him the Conn Smythe Trophy winner under any circumstance? I've kind of said no. I don't think that's possible if there's anybody remotely close. And Mitchell Marner makes a much better storyline. But you guys are in and around the Toronto area. I mean, if it's the Canadiens on one side of the draw and Mitchell Marner and the Vegas Golden Knights on the other side of the draw, who do Leafs fans find the ability to root for in that particular scenario?
I know the answer. I was going to let Kyle go. My answer is they root for Mitch Marner because now it's like he's the one that got away, and Leaf fans are like, yep, he was our guy. We should have kept him. So they are rooting. I know Leaf fans that are rooting for Mitch Marner. They want to see him raise a cup.
Does it ramp up the pressure on the Leafs organization as a whole? If Marner comes here, performs the way he has already in the postseason, can win a cup, because you have other examples of players that have left Toronto and gone on to have success elsewhere. I mean, Naz Kadri to a lesser extent as well when he went to Colorado. And of course, the story that I always come back to when people decide that Mitchell Marner was weak, couldn't handle Toronto, it's the Ryan O'Reilly departure back in, 2023 when they traded for him. He had an opportunity to sign in Toronto, a little bit of a longer-term deal, and went, you know what? No, I'm out. I'm going to Nashville. I'm playing in a different market. I think that for me is more emblematic of the things that have gone wrong for the Leafs franchise over the last decade plus. I know it's going back to 1967 since they've won a cup, but clearly it's a cultural issue, and identifying the kind of players that can embrace that limelight, much like some of the New York sports teams had to over the years and the Yankees had a number of players that performed elsewhere and just couldn't handle the weight of the expectations when you put on the pinstripes.
Todd, you asked our opinion of what we think might happen should Montreal meet Vegas and Mitch Marner in the final. Do you boys recall the Jonestown Massacre from 1978, just 11 years after? That was a cult that extincted itself as well, and I have to feel like it would be a little apocalyptic around these parts at that point, because that is a absolute worst case scenario. Flipping the page to another Toronto sports team, as one often does when mentioning the Jonestown Massacre, you see signs of life on this Blue Jays team, because it seems to me like they're getting better at bats and they're making harder contact, and there's a pulse here now.
I do see signs of life, and fortunately for the Blue Jays, they play in the American League where it may take just a 500 record to get into the postseason. I mean, look at the American League Central, look at the American League West. I mean, those two divisions are prime candidates for relegation in a North American sports model if we could somehow roll that out. But the Jays, despite playing 500 ball, only one game out of the wild card right now. I think the biggest question is dealing with the injury bug, and Jays fans can look at it glass half full. All right, we're going to get these injuries out of the system now, and when the games start to mean a little bit more as we get deeper into the summer months, hopefully it's in the rear view. But at the same time, the pitching staff, how many injuries can they really deal with and be able to cobble 27 outs together on a night in, night out basis? We know Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is day to day as well. But I think Jays fans, if you'd have told them, hey, here are all the things that are going to go wrong the first 60 games of the season, and you're still going to get out of that patch of the schedule with roughly a 500 record, you probably would have taken that. And I think the Jays will be just fine going forward as long as some of these pitching injuries aren't more serious than we're led to believe, and they're potentially in the market to acquire another starter or two if some of those guys become available closer to the deadline.
And if it's said to Leaf fans at the same time, and Jesus will be in a uniform for the Jays and hit a grand slam, they're like, okay, now you're talking crazy talk.
Everybody needs a little hope to spring eternal one way or another, Toolsy. And if that's how it happens, then so be it.
Yeah, it's been I talked to Keegan this morning, and everything from lapses in defense, which is becoming a glaring error for the Blue Jays this season, to injuries, to fan favorite Davis Schneider getting sent down to AAA, to your MVP, Alejandro Kirk being it. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, yet they're in the American League East, and so you aren't dead.
What has Keegan said about the overall atmosphere in and around the room? I mean, are the players still upbeat and optimistic, just given all the nonsense that they've had to deal with so far to start the season?
He says he hasn't given us a total vibe of the clubhouse, but they're keeping it light. And Jesus Sanchez, he says, is the guy who seems to be doing that single-handedly because the smile never leaves his face. So I like to pinpoint him holding the gap while Alejandro Kirk comes back. And as I've mentioned before, it sets up for Kirk resurrecting the Blue Jay season. And with each passing day, Keegan keeps pointing to, Kirk keeps showing he is the centerpiece of this team.
I mean, he is a tremendous force in the batter's box. There's no doubt about it. I won't claim to know what goes on, with a chemistry and camaraderie standpoint, but this is a group I feel will be just fine. And look, the good thing for the Jays, if they struggle over the next couple of weeks, is that the kickoff of the next CFL season will take all the limelight and luster off the Jays. So they'll move off the back page of the sports section and be relegated, to page 6.
World Cup in Toronto too.
Look, I wish Jesse Marsh was our manager here stateside more so than dealing with the Pochettino experience, but I'm just not sure which players are actually healthy and going to be out there for the starting 11 against Bosnia when things kick off for Team Canada.
The Pochettino experience is also something you can pay for at the Venetian.
Well, I mean, you can pay for it at the Venetian, but you may be able to pay for it off Las Vegas Boulevard as well, but it may come with very different terms and conditions.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Todd.